Jones in the midst of a second tough season, unfortunately. But the story hasn't been as straightforward as you might think. There's been some good for Mac, there's been some bad for Mac, and there's also been times where the supporting cast hasn't exactly done him a ton of favors. So to get a closer look into what exactly is going on with Mac Jones, I've got one of my favorite people in the business when it comes to breaking down and analyzing quarterbacks. He does the NFL draft for Bleacher Report, QB charting for Reception Perception, and NFL work for the 33rd team. Ladies and gentlemen, Derrik Klassen. Derrik, how are you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. Happy to be here. So, first time we've actually been face to face. We've known each other for like 5-6 years now, but it's finally good to be here. Feels good.
Like I said, better late than never, man. Very happy to have you. So before we get into the actual film and break down what's going on from a play-to-play basis using last week as examples, what have you seen from Mac Jones for the entire season? Obviously, I thought he had a pretty solid start the first couple of weeks. Wasn't really specifically putting the team in position to lose those games. Then obviously you got the Dallas game, you got the Saints game where he took some massive steps back. And it feels like he's basically been trying to claw his way back since then. Is that kind of what you've been seeing?
Yeah, pretty much. I thought first of all, coming into the season, I thought he was kind of underrated. Like, I think he's funny to talk about because I think his rookie season was overrated. But then I think people forgot how good he can be in the right circumstances because of everything that went wrong last year. And then I thought, like you said, for the first few weeks of the season, the offense looked a little bit more cohesive. They were getting some decent play out of a couple of the skill players. And the offensive line was not quite as bad as it was early, especially early last year. Early last year, they were a complete nightmare. And so I think everything around him looked a little bit better for a second, and he was playing a little bit better. I think he was playing a little bit more confident. Some of the accuracy that he really showed his rookie year was starting to pop up. Not quite to that level again, but he was starting to play a little bit better. And then, like you said, there was those 2 weeks there where that's the worst that he's ever looked at really any level of football. Like, he never even really had stretches like that at Alabama. And even for large parts of last year, he wasn't like that kind of terrible where he was like actively rebelling against the offense and just completely cratering every time something happened. But I think it's been nice that he's been able to bounce back a little bit and actually play within the offense again. I think he's, like you said, crawling back a little bit and looking okay.
Yep. So first up, like I mentioned in the intro, it hasn't always been Mac. Sometimes the pieces around him just aren't always elevating him to the level of just being the quarterback you would expect him to be. So I'm going to pull up this first clip. This is going to be one where, again, part of the other players around him not really putting him in position to succeed.
Yeah, this one was, so I think it was a third down, maybe a 3rd and 6, something like that. But the first thing before I even roll the clip that I want to show is the Dolphins have a nose right over the center. That's going to make it really hard to slide one way or the other just because you have a guy who is immediately going to pressure the center. And then as I kind of roll the clip a little bit more, you're going to see they're going to kind of get into this a little bit of a rush front. So if the center can't slide anywhere and they only have the left guard and the left tackle for these two immediate threats off of the line of scrimmage, they got to block those guys. Like, they're in man protection. Those 3 guys have to go get blocked. What ends up happening is the Patriots don't keep the back in protection to get any other potential blitzers, which would be this Mike linebacker, and he just goes out for a quick route. And then the Dolphins actually drop the end. So the left tackle ends up blocking nobody, and the Mike ends up coming through the A-gap and getting immediate pressure on Mac Jones. Mac has to kind of scramble a little bit and go make a throw to the running back, and he completes it, which is nice. But the problem is the end who dropped out, which I think was Bradley Chubb, is able to get enough piece on the running back to where the rest of the team can rally. They can't convert. So that to me was kind of just a situation where it was like, I don't know if it's fully Mac's fault that they couldn't get into the right protection or keep the back in or whatever. I don't know if on that play that was something that they had in. But that to me was like Miami just cooked up a perfect pressure, and they didn't have an answer for it.
And it's funny you mentioned that because I specifically asked Cole Strange yesterday about this one. I tried to tiptoe around it as best I could to basically be like, why did you allow that sack? But he was really cool about it. And he was saying that, with defensive linemen, especially when it comes to blitzes, they usually have a tell. Like, a guy's kind of closer on you or you got a safety cap. And there's usually something that you've seen from film where you're like, all right, I know what's coming. apparently with this specific front, they didn't see anything on film that indicated there was going to be a blitz. And then as you see, it's a very late adjustment. So it's that split second where if you're watching at home, especially because it looks bad when you've got Trent and Cole Strange both blocking the same person, it's a lot easier in that situation than it is when you're actually on the field and you have to make that split second adjustment. And early on, this was one of the things that kind of encouraged me for Mac, because we've seen at times he just crumbles when there's unexpected pressure around him. He'll throw into traffic or just his fundamentals kind of fall flat. In this one, he recognizes it, gets it to his check down, and lives to fight another day, which I thought he did a pretty decent job in this game compared to what he's done in some games past.
100%. And like, that's the thing, is like Mac did something, which is cool. This was just one of those ones where it's like the structure of the offense just didn't quite have an answer.
Exactly. So before we get to our next play, I wanted to send it to our friends at FanDuel. Got to pay those bills. We will be right back.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, so this next play, we've got a pretty rare sighting from the Patriots offense, a touchdown. So let's get your perspective on Kendrick Bourne's long catch and run, which is helped a little bit by some extra attention to a guy that Patriots fans are really rallying around, jumping on the bandwagon for, a little Pop Douglas. So what did you see on this play?
Yeah, I thought this one, this to me was like, before I actually run the clip, I'll kind of run it down. They end up running Kendrick Bourne on the crosser from 3 here, and he ends up scoring. That to me is like a quintessential Mac throw. Like, you saw this all over his film at Alabama, where he was throwing these mid-range crossers. That's just kind of one of those throws that he really loves. He's really good at being able to hit guys in stride. And so what ends up happening here is Miami is going to roll down this strong safety into a kind of funky cover 1 look, where this guy is not really actually playing like a hole. He's kind of almost playing down at the sticks to 1 and 2, where he's kind of expecting Mac to throw like a slant or something right at the sticks, because they're the Patriots and he's Mac Jones, and that's what they've typically done on offense. So what ends up happening is like, so they roll that guy down to come and play number 1 and number 2. Mac sees this and he goes, oh, well, if we've got man coverage and the whole player is down trying to play right at the sticks, I can come back and hit Kendrick Bourne 1-on-1, hit him in stride, hit him for a touchdown. And they actually kind of blocked this play up okay. Miami didn't really send in exotic pressure. They kind of just go 5 across the board, and all they've got to do is block it up. And they do it. I mean, guy gets beat there a little bit, but he gives Mac enough time
right
to get the ball out. And really, that's all you can ask for at the stage of this offense. So I thought this was one of the rare plays where Patriots actually just got into a right look. Mac read it out correctly. Kendrick Bourne beat his guy, and these are the type of plays you hope they can get more often, but haven't really been there all year. So,
and like you mentioned, they block it up pretty well, but just because of where the Patriots offense is right now, you can't really take for granted the fact that Max still was able to keep his eyes downfield with David Andrews kind of getting pushed in his lap, because we've seen, he even mentioned it, I think it was a couple weeks ago, where he acknowledged, yeah, there were a couple times where I dropped my eyes against the Bills, where, the game tape was really good. It was pretty good for the most part, all things considered. But still, when he would see a flash of color in his face, eyes drop, kind of gets into that panic mode where you're like, nope, Mac, rein it in. It's okay. You're going to be all right. So, yeah, just nice to see him actually be able to get the ball out, show some confidence, not the highest difficulty throw, but still being able to make a play. But obviously, wasn't all good in this game for Mac. There were also some pretty significant downsides. And in this next one, we're going to see a play where live, I wasn't sure if this was just Jalen Ramsey making a play in his debut. But really, when I looked at it for a second and third time, I was like, I think this is probably just a play that Mac would want back. And he acknowledged the same thing after the game. So before I get to that, I want to hear what you have to say about his interception to Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, this one is, I mean, first of all, Jalen Ramsey does make a crazy play on it. I mean, just the way that he moves is, I mean, he's 1 of 1 when he's playing well. You know what I mean? Like, there's just not many guys like that. What I will say is, so before I end up running the clip, they run basically well, I'll run the clip and then I'll kind of walk back through it. They end up running what is supposed to be a quarters beater, where they're trying to run this post wheel concept. And it's really more of like a wheel sit, where when he sees this corner take the post and really like take it high and try to pass it off to the high safety, this guy can sit. And they actually ran this concept earlier in the game, and Mac Jones didn't throw it. And so it's interesting that he goes back to it here. But the thing I would say about this throw is it looks bad when you run it all the way and Jalen Ramsey picks it off with like room to spare. Honestly, like he could have been 2 steps slow and he probably would have been there. The first thing I would say is Mac Jones's, I think his footwork is really bad here. Like when he gets back into this throwing posture, I think he's a little bit too wide here. And you can even see when he throws, he ends up kind of leaning back. And that's always been a problem with him, where he kind of fades away from the ball, fades away from the throw. Really hard to do that when you're not a guy who has very good arm strength in the first place. And so he's losing what arm strength he did have, which is going to be a problem when you're trying to fit a sideline throw like this. The other problem I think is, I'm going to scrub back again. When you watch the play, and trying to settle because he knows the corner is high, and Mac tries to lead him up the field. So I think that's a mistake on Mac's part of not really understanding how this concept is supposed to work against the way that the corner was playing it. So I actually think this is like a workable throw if Mac Jones had a little bit cleaner footwork, if his arm was a little bit better, if he knew where this ball was supposed to be. But all those things were not true on this play, and he ends up throwing the pick to Jalen Ramsey. So.
And the weird thing, it's not the only time this season. I forget what exactly the play was, but there was another time where it was a similar situation. Kendrick Bourne tries to settle into a void in zone, and for some reason, Mac doesn't adjust with him and just ends up throwing a coverage. And one thing, we talked about this before the show, Mac's footwork has been like that since week 1. And you even mentioned it's been like that since college, where for some reason he throws away. It's a little bit sloppy. One, why do you think that is? Why is that such a persistent problem that he hasn't managed to work out? It's in the 3rd year in the NFL. And do you think that's something that is fixable either this season, probably unlikely because of what I just said, or is that something he can maybe iron out with more coaching?
You would hope that he could get a little bit better at it, but at this point, he's played enough ball that it's like, I don't know if or when he will. The thing, I think really the biggest problem, and it doesn't necessarily always turn out this way, but I think the reason why he does that is he just doesn't want to get hit. And like he's trying to protect himself from a lot of hits. Like you saw this a lot at Bama when the pocket was getting a little bit tighter, he would do a lot of that stuff. And we've seen that mostly throughout most of his NFL career, where like he's willing to make the throw. It's just that he's going to fade away from it and try to protect himself a little bit. And I think because he's gotten so used to that, especially behind the offensive line, the way that it's played the last year and a half, I think it's kind of just been a recurring theme with him, where like that's almost just the way that he plays now, which is pretty frustrating.
And he's never had the chance to, like you said, actually stand behind an offensive line where he was like, yes, I will have time. I'm not going to have people at my feet. And at the very least, when that happens, you're just hoping, okay, just don't put it in harm's way if you're going to do that. Like there's going to be some misses just if your footwork's inconsistent, period. But you don't want the compounding mistakes, which we've seen from him. But this is going to be another example where we're going to give Mac a little bit of slack here, show something where he was positive. But again, someone on the other side or someone in the supporting cast didn't help him out.
Yep. This is Mac is not the greatest quarterback in the league, but he does some nice things. And it's just a big part of the Patriots' problem is they're just not helping him. So they're going to run like what I've seen called wrap or spin, basically where the front guy here is to the top of the screen, going to run kind of like a little sit hitch. And then they're going to run the dig over the top of it. Every offense in the NFL runs this. If you watch on Sunday, if you pay attention for it on Sunday, you will see it in every single game. But anyway, Mac is going to kind of set the protection here. He's going to try to help everyone out, and they're going to end up sliding. They're going to end up 4-man sliding to the right, basically, because there's no extra threat here to the left. Like they're probably not going to send the nickel from the field. Like teams aren't going to do that. And this guy has so much depth that he's not coming either. And if he does, you're just going to beat him with a hot. So who cares? And so they kind of push the line. And I think Mac Jones does a good job in that sense. And then when you run the play, I think Mac actually does a good job of knowing where the ball needs to be, because this concept ends up working out the way where you want it to, where the sit kind of draws one of the underneath defenders and the receiver, Jalen Reagor, can get under the corner. The problem is, I'll go back again. Rager can't really get out of this break and separate the way that he needs to. And so the ball kind of ends up barely hitting him at his fingertips at the front of the route. But I actually think this is a really good pre-snap process by Mac. I think it's a good decision by Mac. I think it's a well-timed ball. I think it's a well-placed ball. You just see Jalen Rager kind of get hitched up, caught up, and not really be able to burst out of that break to make this throw work. If Brandon Ayuk is running this route, it's a completion and he's getting 25 yards. You know, like that's the biggest issue in the Patriots offense.
They definitely need somebody like that. So this isn't super relevant to this play because, like you said, his pre-snap process was good. One thing we talked about before the show is the fact that Mac is given a lot of responsibility before the play. There's a lot of adjustments, like find the mic, then reset the mic, change the play if you don't like it, which with a guy like Mac who's really going to win with his brain, you'd like him to be able to find the best possible matchup, be able to get the protection where it needs to be. But where does the detriment come into play there? Because, just from what we've seen, there's times where they get delayed games. There's times where you have guys moving at the same time. JT O'Sullivan even mentioned, hey, sometimes you just need to be confident in the play you call and run it. And there is that in this offense. But from your perspective, what's the pro and con of having a quarterback with so much control before the snap or just such a lengthy pre-snap checklist?
Yeah, I think the pro, and I do think this applies to Mac, is like he is a very smart quarterback. I think his pre-snap process is good, and he can handle this to a degree that a lot of young players necessarily can't. I do think he does a good job of setting protections, especially this year. Last year, it was tougher because I think just their overall protection plan was a nightmare. But he's done a better job this year, which I think has helped. And I think he's just a guy who functions better as a passer when he kind of knows where the ball needs to go before it's snapped. And I think he's kind of worked himself into being good at that. Almost like, Phillip Rivers was kind of like this, where he was just – he kind of knew where he was going to pick and shoot before the ball was snapped. And I think Mac Jones, like that's the dream for Mac, is to get to that level. The problem is he's still a young player and he's not up to that level. And so to ask him to do this every single down, when really the offense doesn't ever have easy buttons to like take stuff off of him. I mean, they'll run screens and all this other BS stuff and they'll run the ball a little bit, but they don't have like chunk plays that are just pushing the ball down the field to help him out. You know what I mean? Right. So he's got to do this for 8-10 snaps a drive. And it's like, man, that's just asking for a lot for a guy who's like 25 years old and really only has like 1 year in a functional NFL offense at this point.
Yeah. Not making his job any easier at all with personnel. Well, speaking of jobs, one of the very helpful sponsors for today's show is LinkedIn. If you're looking for a job, might as well check them out, see what they can do for you. We're going to give a quick word from them. We'll be right back.
We also want to tell you about LinkedIn Talent Solutions here. These days, every new potential hire can feel like high-stakes wager for your small business. We've got a small business, Taylor, growing every day, but small. Still, you want to be 100% certain you have access to the best qualified candidates like Taylor, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team fast and free. And we have used this quite a bit, and we have found a lot of really good talent by using this LinkedIn Talent Solutions here. And it really is our primary kind of go-to every time we have an opening here at CLNS Media. And we just actually filled quite a few openings through LinkedIn. So, I think we onboarded 3 people last week, Taylor. We did.
Family getting bigger.
The family is growing. So it's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 delivering quality. So all you have to do is post your job for free at linkedin.com/beat and Patriots Beat, which Taylor Kyles is on the Patriots Beat. LinkedIn.com/beat, post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, so the final play we're going to take a look at. This is another one that not only Matt can improve on, but I feel like we're going to see a similar concept this weekend against the Commanders, who also run a defense that's very heavy on soft zone. So what did you see on this play?
This play to me was actually the most frustrating Mac play of the game to me, even more so than the interception, because at least the interception, like, there's stuff he could clean up and do better. But this to me was almost like this play just isn't in Mac's DNA. So what they end up doing here is the Patriots are running an under center play action concept that everybody runs, where you're just getting the post from one side. In this case, the Patriots are running it from the top of the screen, and then you're going to get like an over route from the other side. And basically the whole idea is eventually, I'll kind of roll it a little bit. You'll see the Dolphins spin to one high. All you're trying to do on this concept is see what the middle of the field safety is doing. If the middle of the field safety is going to sit high and stay high over this post, you throw the crosser if it's open. And if he ends up nailing down, you try to throw the post. And that's really kind of all you're doing on this play. It's really like it's really a two-man concept, and then they'll have Pop going out for the check down, but that's not really like part of what he's reading. So I'll roll it out a little bit more. You'll start to see, we talked about this a little bit before the show. I think Douglas probably takes a little bit too long trying to snap this route off. Like he's not really like trying to pull the safety down until about 14 yards. I think if he snaps it off a little bit earlier and starts to take that angle on the over, he probably gets the safety to trigger instantly, and then it gives Mac a very clear read. What ends up happening is it's kind of muddy because he takes it so high. At this point, I think maybe a little bit sooner. At this point, you can see the safety starting to turn his hips. Mac has his eyes down the field. Like, he knows that this is the thing that he's looking for. But instead of going, oh, the safety is driving on the crosser, I can throw the post now, he just goes, oh, no, the safety drove on the crosser, I don't have a play anymore. Which that's just not top 10 quality quarterbacking. And I do think part of the problem is, we've talked about it, Mac is not very comfortable behind this offensive line right now. And he was going to get hit. Like, he was going to get hit if he wanted to throw this post. And I think maybe he didn't want to do that. But also, at the end of the day, you got to understand, like, Mac just doesn't really have the arm to throw a lot of these consistently unless it's just unbelievably wide open. And you could make the case that that's true here. But again, because some of the pressure I think he might have been feeling, he wasn't comfortable he could get it there. So this was one of those plays where you kind of go from being able to have what is, for a really good quarterback, a pretty easy shot play to this post player. I said it when we were talking before the show. If this is Geno Smith, he's throwing the ball. Like, they are getting a touchdown on the post to, I guess in this case, it would probably be Tyler Lockett. Like, that's probably what is happening. In this case, Mac ends up holding the ball, kind of just goes into his shell and doesn't do anything and takes a sack. So,
yeah, and we talked about this, like where you pointed that out. And honestly, in my brain, I'm saying that throw just isn't, like you said, it's not in his DNA. I actually went back to see, okay, when's the last time that he actually threw the post in that situation? It was last season against the Bills in the last game of the year. Threw in a pump fake, but he had a clean pocket. And I actually did throw a dime to Devontae Parker. But like you said, that's not a throw you expect him to make consistently. So you think about the wide receiver situation now where you got Jalen Reagor, who is the guy who's taking the top off there. You got Tyquan Thornton. They're fast guys. They can win deep. But then you also have to think of, okay, does Mac's skill set allow him to actually be able to capitalize on those opportunities where a defense has to respect, okay, there's a possibility he's going to go deep, or a team's just going to go single high and then drive on it and then just be like, all right, we'll switch it up and just have the corner run deep because we're not really afraid of him throwing that. Like, so against the Commanders, like I said, another defense plays a lot of soft zone. He's going to get opportunities to attack some quarters coverage and exploit some safeties. What do you expect to see from him? Do you think that he can capitalize on some of those chances, or do you think it's going to be a game where you're just trying to avoid Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne, and it's going to be quick hitters, RPOs, and maybe just some in-breakers off play action?
I mean, I think that's kind of got to be the game plan still, because again, that's really what we've seen from Mac at his best, when he is able to operate pre-snap and really win pre-snap, throw a lot of quick stuff, really get to hots and checkdowns comfortably, and then just hit a couple of in-breakers. I mean, that was really the game plan against Buffalo, right? Where he's really just kind of being like a pea shooter, just like, 5 yards here, 6 yards here. Oh, I hit a crosser and it went for 50 yards. That's cool. And that's not necessarily like the getting random explosives part is not necessarily like sustainable. But against the Commanders defense that is not very good and doesn't have corners who, in my opinion, can really run, I think that might be something that they could actually get. I think that's something that they could get. And I actually do think there's a chance that the Patriots might be able to like wad up their protections a little bit in the middle and be a little bit softer on the edges, because the Commanders just traded away their 2 Pro Bowl level edge players, and they're not really going to have as much out of there. So I do wonder if Matt can not completely, crumble under whatever Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne might get to him. I think if he can do that and just get the ball out, like, this Commanders defense is just not disciplined enough to really beat them. So I think they could probably, they're not going to score 40 points, but like they could have a decent enough day where the defense, Bill Belichick, I think is going to give Sam Howell a bad time. So
some entertainment value for this game, even if Mac and the offense can't necessarily pull it out, but we're hoping at least for some fun in this one. And if there's I don't know if Patriots fans necessarily want to get right game. I feel like right now everyone's in let's get a high pick mode. But this offense, if it's going to get some confidence, it's going to be this week. But Derrik, thank you so much for your time, buddy. Nice to finally do this face-to-face. Had a great time. Please and thank you. Let everybody know where they can find your fantastic work and anything you got coming out in the pipeline.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. It's been great. First time, hopefully not the last time. We'll love to be back at some point. Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at QB Class. You can find me. Taylor already mentioned it, all the places I write it beforehand, but we are going to start pumping out a lot more of our actual scouting reports on Bleacher Report very soon. I think by the end of the month. So you'll be able to read those, all my takes on Drake May and Caleb and Brock Bowers, all that good stuff. So be on the lookout for that for sure.
I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. Who do you think is the best pick? And honestly, like more of an attainable kind of person. So probably not a Caleb Williams, but in this quarterback class, if the Patriots want to get some actual competition, who would be at the top of your list if you're a scout for New England?
Oh man. I mean, yeah.
Put you on the spot here.
Everybody. Yeah. The first two guys are completely off the board. What I will say is like my take on the quarterback class is that there are a lot of really interesting guys that I would want to take in the top 100. I don't know if there's another guy I would want to take in the first round outside of the obvious two. I think there's a couple of guys that could maybe fight for that. I've been really impressed with Tyler Van Dyke from Miami, and I think he kind of fits what really the Patriots should want to do, which is like a run the ball and then throw the ball down the field type of offense. Tyler Van Dyke is going to throw the ball down the field, maybe to his detriment sometimes, but he is going to try to do it. And so I like him. I like him a little bit. If Shedeur Sanders chooses to come out, I think he has something to him. Like I would still like to see him improve a little bit in terms of, his processing and I think his timing and his pocket management, but he just has unbelievable poise and he's a really, really accurate thrower. And I think those things usually translate pretty well. So those would probably be the guys that I'm looking for, if they end up in that late first round, or wherever it is that the Patriots end up picking a quarterback if they trade back or whatever. So.
Also, just Shadeur's poise with that offensive line is one of the craziest. Just like he's a college quarterback, you would think he'd crumble, but I mean, he's just got that Sanders DNA. But Derrik, thank you again, brother. I appreciate you, and you will be back. We're locking that in. Thank you all so much for watching. We appreciate you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, and we will see you next time.